Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the single most complex object we know of in the entire universe, that 3-pound marvel of fat and protein sitting inside your skull. So, how does this little universe in our heads actually work? Come on, let's start peeling back the layers. Okay, before we jump in, just a quick but really important heads up. This explainer is purely for your information. It is absolutely not a substitute for professional medical advice. So for any health concerns, please talk to a qualified healthcare professional. To really set the stage for what we're about to get into, let's start with a fundamental truth. It's something that drives thousands of scientists every single day. Despite everything we've accomplished, the very organ that lets us understand the universe is itself our greatest mystery. So where does all this complexity even start? Well, it begins with the raw parts. Your brain is packed with an estimated 86 billion neurons. Think about that. Each one is like a tiny biological computer, a single building block for every thought, every memory, every feeling you've ever had. But here's where the numbers get truly mind-bending. It's how those neurons connect. See, each one can link up with thousands of others, creating this dense web of around 100 trillion connections. 100 trillion. It's inside that massive, tangled network that the real magic of the mind actually happens. So, how in the world are we going to start to unpack this? Well, we're going to break it down. We'll journey through 5 key areas, starting with the brain's physical architecture, then diving into its cellular machinery, looking at how it computes reality, its amazing ability to reflect on itself, and finally, we'll touch on the frontiers of what we still don't know. All right, first up, let's look at the basic architecture, the actual physical stuff that makes thinking possible. If you were to just look at brain tissue, you'd see it's made of 2 different kinds of stuff. You've got gray matter, which is on the outer layer. That's where all the neuron cell bodies are crammed together. It's basically the brain's main processor. And then you've got the white matter on the inside. Think of this as the brain's fiber optic network. It's made of all the connections between the neurons, and it's white because it's insulated, which lets signals travel at incredible speeds. Now, if we zoom out a little bit, we can see that the brain is organized into 3 big parts. Each one has its own special jobs, but they are all deeply interconnected. The cerebrum. This is the part you probably think of when you picture brain, with all those famous wrinkles and folds. This is the main event. It's the seat of your consciousness, the home of your personality. It's where all that higher-level thinking and problem-solving goes down. Okay, so we've seen the big picture layout. Now let's zoom way in, down to the micro level, to see how this incredible network actually gets anything done. Communication between neurons, it's like this stunningly fast electrochemical dance. It starts with an electrical signal, an action potential, that zips down one neuron. When it hits the end, it triggers the release of these little chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. They flood across a tiny gap, the synapse, and latch onto the next neuron, which kicks off a whole new electrical signal. And this whole thing, it happens billions and billions of times every single second. So we've got the hardware, we've got the signals, but how does all that zapping and firing translate into our experience of the world? Well, here is the really cool part. Your brain is not a passive observer. It doesn't just record what's out there like a camera. No, it's an active artist, constantly building your reality from the ground up. This quote nails a central idea in neuroscience. Your brain is a prediction machine. It's always taking in messy, incomplete information from your senses and using it to build a useful model of the world. Think about catching a ball. You weren't consciously calculating physics, right? Of course not. Your brain is just predicting the ball's path based on everything it's learned before. So what you perceive as reality isn't the raw data. It's your brain's best guess. Take your eyesight, for example. You might think it's like a camera just taking a picture, but it's so much more complicated. The light that hits your eye is just step 1. That light gets turned into a neural signal, which then has to travel through all these different relay stations and processing centers before you actually consciously see anything. The brain literally deconstructs the information and then rebuilds it into a coherent image. And here's where the human brain really shines, in a way that even today's most powerful AI just can't match. An AI can learn to recognize a cat in a million pictures, sure, but we understand what a cat is. We get the context, how it might behave. We build these deep causal models of the world, not just shallow patterns. Okay, now for what might be the most mind-bending part of all this, the brain's ability to turn all that incredible processing power inward, to actually think about itself. This is where we get into self-awareness. The fancy term for this is metacognition. And it's not just thinking, it's thinking about your thinking. It's that little voice inside your head that goes, wait, am I sure about that? Or, yeah, I'm pretty confident in this answer. It's basically the mind looking at itself in the mirror. And this brings us to a huge question. If our brain is building models, and we know those models can sometimes be wrong, I mean, just think about optical illusions, then how do we ever know when we're mistaken? How can we tell when our own perception is tricking us?
Well, here's how scientists actually study this. They separate two kinds of decisions. The first is just a judgment about the outside world, like, is that line tilted left or right? Simple enough. But the second one is the key to metacognition. It's a judgment about your own confidence in that first answer. How sure am I? It's that ability to check our own certainty that lets us learn and correct ourselves.
All right, we have covered a ton of ground, from the physical tissue of the brain all the way up to thinking about thinking. So now let's bring it all together, recap the biggest ideas, and look at the vast mysteries that still lie ahead. So let's boil this all down. First, the brain's complexity is just on another level, from its structure to its trillions of connections. Second, it's a system of specialized parts that all work together in these huge networks. Third, and this is a big one, it doesn't just see the world, it actively builds a predictive model of it. Fourth, its ability to think about its own thoughts, metacognition, is a true peak of that complexity. And finally, for all we know, we still have no idea how to map thoughts at the circuit level. That remains a massive frontier.
And that last point is so critical. As Professor Nancy Kanwisher puts it, for almost all the things we do with our minds, like just understanding this sentence, we have nothing that even looks like a circuit-level wiring diagram. We can't point to a specific group of neurons and say, aha, that's where meaning happens. That is the grand challenge for the next generation of scientists.
So we'll end with one final provocative question that all this science forces us to ask. If everything you see, everything you hear, everything you believe is just a carefully constructed model running on biological hardware, then who or what is the real you? It's a question that really sits at the crossroads of neuroscience and philosophy, leaving us all to wonder about the very nature of who we are.